So you want to take a course on Dune. Either that or your YouTube recommendations are really messed up. Either way, let's talk. And let's talk about a couple of different ways that we can spend time with a work of art and about how we might combine these two ways to get the best of both worlds. So one way involves deliberately building up, let's call it a toolbox of concepts and ideas that we can then use to peel back the layers of a work of art, see the various meanings of each layer, see how the layers interact, and see how the work relates to our personal reality and to the larger reality that we all share. This is the way of working that you see in the And Philosophy series, where, for instance, you're invited to study The Simpsons by getting to know various philosophical traditions that can be applied to that particular television show. Now, the upside of this way of working is that oftentimes ways of interpreting the work of art do come to you that you might not have been able to figure out on your own. And sometimes the work of art really does come alive through the application of the various tools in the toolbox. If there's a risk to this way of working, it's that sometimes it starts to feel like the work of art is just there as an excuse to use the toolbox. And at its most extreme, it's almost like the process of analysis becomes like dissection, and the work of art dies on the table as we cut it apart using the various dissection tools we're trying to master. This can happen in classrooms too, of course. I think we've all known what it is to actually be discussing some work of art that we like and then discover that it's sort of dying in front of us because the teacher insists that we track down this or that symbol or theme rather than just letting the work of art speak to us in a way which feels authentic and meaningful.
In what way does the author's use of the prison symbolize?
Now, the other way of working is basically just to gather together with other people who care about what we care about and start exchanging our enthusiasm and see what comes out of that. And sometimes that way of working, and of course it doesn't feel like work, it feels like play, but that way of working will keep the work of art very much alive in the short term. In fact, we feel like it's more alive than ever because we are exchanging our enthusiasms with the enthusiasms of others, much like ourselves. So in the short term, it feels really good. In the long term, sometimes the work starts to sort of stagnate or even die a slow death. Perhaps it just becomes a way for us to interact with other people, which is fine. Perhaps it becomes just an occasion for in-jokes or memes. And to be clear, I like a good Dune meme as much as the next person, even those memes that once I've seen them, I can't forget. But that said, this is still a way to kill a work of art, just to kill it slowly by allowing it to become sort of like a medium of exchange rather than something that actually has substance and is alive in and of itself and speaks to us. Okay, so in the Dune course, how are we going to get the best of both worlds? Well, we are definitely going to develop a toolbox, no question. But we will make sure that as we develop it, we're doing so in order that the work can speak to us more fully, rather than just be an excuse to learn about extraneous topics. And we'll know that we've succeeded when we really do feel that the work of art is more powerful in our experience than before, even as it's also better connected to other things. So, I developed this way of working in courses I taught at universities for years, and usually I called the course Living with Big Books. The idea is just to read one long novel very slowly and get it surrounded in a helpful way by whatever ideas and concepts can help us to open it up. In the case of Dune, the toolbox is going to be quite diverse because there are so many fields of study that Frank Herbert drew upon as he wrote Dune, and there are so many fields of study and realities today that Dune addresses in various fashions. So it's going to be a rich, varied toolbox. And I don't think there's any significant risk that the toolbox will sort of overshadow the thing that we're really there for, which is the novel. The Dune course meets for a month. It's meeting in the month of May on Sundays, and it'll also meet in the month of June, starting June 9th on Sundays. Generally meets for a couple of hours, although I will stick around for as long as another hour and a half after the official 2-hour mark if anybody just wants to keep chatting. And we'll read the book in the usual pacing, about a quarter at a time, with about 20 to 50 pages of outside reading, drawing on various fields of study to build up our toolbox. I plan to offer the Dune course once a month, or perhaps more often if interest builds, for the rest of 2024 and probably on into 2025. So if you can't take the course in a particular month, perhaps you can take it later on. And it won't always be offered on Sundays. I'll vary the time and the day, perhaps from one month to another. Send me an email, by the way, if there's a particular time you want to request. And of course, send me an email if you just have questions about the course in general. One thing to note as you approach the course is that it will not ultimately be about trying to come up with some definitive value for the novel. I think we all know that past a certain point, you can't really speak about a work of art from a posture of defense. So I'm not going to insist that anyone appreciate this or that aspect of the work. At the same time, we also don't have to come up with definitive critiques. You may decide to sort of make a list for yourself of the book's merits and demerits, but sometimes the biggest challenge with a work of art is seeing how, as a sort of living thing, the things that you may value and the things that you may object to actually have a difficult, complicated relationship to each other, such that they're not really easy to separate into columns. Recognizing that complexity is sometimes what makes the work of art the most meaningful. That said, do reach out if you've got questions, and I'll see you in class.